So we're here today at the incredible Borobudur. It's described as the largest Buddhist temple, the largest mandala in the world.
Yeah, it's an incredible place. It defies words. One of the most exquisitely built, mesmerizing forms of architecture. It looks otherworldly. If we see it as a symbol, then anyone can understand the potency. A mandala is a three-dimensional design that is a blueprint for a celestial day. As you proceed through stairways and passageways in your ascension, you're passing reliefs. Those reliefs depict Buddhist wisdom and Buddhist stories and Buddhist mythology. So you're learning on the pilgrimage of life about who you are, how to live, how to see the world, how to relate to the world, until you realize you're the deity at the center of the universe.
Hi, Miles. Welcome to the podcast. Thank you so much for taking the time out in rainy Bali to come and join us today. So Dr. Miles Neale is a psychotherapist, Tibetan Buddhist teacher, and the founder of Gradual Path, integrating Eastern spirituality with Western psychology. He is the author of Gradual Awakening and co-editor of Advances in Contemplative Psychotherapy. His latest book, Return with Elixir, weaves together Joseph Campbell's mythology, one of my favorite authors, with Jungian psychology, Tibetan Buddhist alchemy, and the celestial cycles. Wow, what a summary. Can't wait to read this book. Well, I have read it, actually. I can't wait for you to read this book. With 25 years of experience, Miles holds a master's in meditation research from NYU and a doctorate in clinical psychology from CIIS. He has trained with renowned Buddhist scholars Robert Thurman, Joseph Loiso, and Geshe Tenzin Dzogpa. He has taught at Harvard, Columbia, and Cornell and designed the Contemplative Studies Immersion Certificate Program. Miles also leads transformative pilgrimages to sacred sites around the world and supports Himalayan nunneries. And we hope to have him joining us on one of our upcoming retreats too. He lives between New York City and Bali. Welcome, Miles. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you so much, Sean. Jolie, pleasure to be with you.
And today we also have my co-host of this podcast, also my sister, and the director of Conscious Festival Retreats, Shelley Lee-Davies. Thanks for joining us, Shell.
Lovely to be on the podcast with you, Sean and Miles. Looking forward to understanding more about the elixir.
And tasting some elixir too.
That's right. We love tasting the elixir. So some would say that we're in an era of profound transformation, and people often refer to it as a polycrisis. Can you expound upon that idea a little bit more? And with the shifting of the ages, people might be aware of this, the end of this yuga in Vedic Hindu terms, the end of the 26,000-year cycle coming into the age of Aquarius, the end of the age of Pisces coming to the age of Aquarius. Maybe you can just touch upon that.
Oh, just small talk. Okay, first things first is the polycrisis, which is a very apt way to describe what we're all witnessing. I mean, let's just take a moment, take a big breath and look around. Look at the signs around us. Any one of them would be significant enough to have us stall out. Let's talk about ecology. We're at a tipping point with all the boundaries being breached and the reinforcements. We've been watching that for a while, and we're at a critical crossroad. Then you have the economic situation. I mean, how much fiat debt can you have? Countries are on the brink of bankruptcy. You have a problem with the medical industry. It's far too costly. And you have a problem with governments. They're far too overreaching in their control. You have a mental health crisis. I mean, this is my domain and also what you guys do. We are experiencing unprecedented levels of anxiety and depression. And the list goes on. And like I said, any one of these crises would be enough to just stall out. They would be the quintessential character of any one generation. But they happen to be in our lifetime converging all at the same time. When I started writing Return with Elixir 5 years ago, one of the questions I had was, what's going on here? I wanted to just understand it from the broadest perspective possible, to get my head wrapped around why we were seeing unprecedented levels of disease, unhappiness, of corporate overreach, government overreach, geopolitical strife. I had to sort of catch my breath. What I discovered in looking was there is explanations. If you can zoom out, you can capture the entire thing very neatly. And one of the ways to look at this is through cosmology. Our culture, modern culture, doesn't really have a cosmology anymore. It doesn't have a particular vantage point that mythologizes or tells a story. But all ancient cultures, whether they be Egypt, Greece, India, Tibet, Mesoamerica, they all shared one cosmological perspective, roughly characterized or called the Great Year. The Great Year is some 25,000 year period. It's basically a pilgrimage of the stars, and it works on what's called mythic or cyclic time. Modern culture works in a linear time. We feel like we're evolving and we're going in a good direction, and yet the reverberations in the feedback system sort of tell us that we're at an impasse. Ancient, primitive, and indigenous cultures understood that time was cyclic. That means that what goes around comes around. And the longest articulation of this cycle suggests to us that we have high civilizations where there's harmony, there's incredible potency of mind, there's very deep spirituality, there's very high technology, there is sort of a golden age of human civilization, if you will. And over periods of time, eons, thousands of years, there's a slow degradation. It goes all the way down to its most destructive place. Chaos, war, consumption, greed, disenfranchisement, an utter sense of not knowing who you are, not feeling like you have any authority, being basically helpless. And an over concentration in materialism. So that means we've lost our spirituality. We don't really know about past and future lives. We don't know the true power of our body as in minds, what they're really capable of. We basically have misunderstood us as this basic one life to live meat sack. And when you get to that point of view in civilization, when you're just a one life to live meat sack, the way that you live as a result of your worldview is that you just eat, drink, and marry, and for tomorrow you die. And that is called nihilism. And we are experiencing as a culture right now the symptomatic presentation of nihilism and narcissism and one life to live and greed. That's what actually accounts for the global crisis at its root. I mean, you can, depending on who you talk to, you might have different scientific explanations for what's going on, but from a moral or spiritual point of view, the root cause is a misunderstanding of who we are, a fundamental constriction around materialism, and that will start to account for what's happening politically, what's happening in the economic system. It starts to explain everything, and as a result, what I suggest is this period that we're entering into is definitely going to be tumultuous, but it is also a doorway. And I think that's the message that most people need to hear. That's what the Great Year is telling us. This is a cycle, just as you breathe and exhale, there's a cosmic cycle of bust and boom, of rise and fall. And we're at the tail end, the last little bit here of the worst part of it. And so there's hope. And I think people need to know that. I think people need to know that even though it looks really dire and dark, if they just see it as an opportunity, there is amidst it this great revelation that's also possible. We could be heading into very, very good territory. And it really comes down to us. It comes down to a sense of responsibility, willingness, a willingness to sacrifice, a willingness to go through this as a rite of passage, to reframe it as a spiritual rite of passage is what basically the book is offering as an opportunity. So that might be a way for us to continue the conversation, because that really, how do you empower people who would ordinarily be absolutely paralyzed and terrified when they really see just the daunting prospect that they're facing?
So I wanted to ask you, for people listening at home, as a psychotherapist, as somebody who has studied Buddhism and who's aware of these cosmological changes that are happening, Would you say that the symptoms of calling, of what you mean by the dark night of the soul, it might look like depression, it might look like anxiety, it might look like not knowing where your future is going to be. Those things that we consider as painful and suffering could be actually the knock on the door for people.
Yeah, I think that's a really important reframe. Okay. If you get a node or a nodule, a lump, you find a lump in your breast or in your testicle, you get terrified. Okay. That's normal because it's unknown to you. But then you go to the doctor and you do a thorough assessment, you do a diagnosis, and from the diagnosis, you determine what's called an etiology and origin. So that exploration gets you to look deeper into the underlying cause. It's a necessary doorway. It's the same one that's described in the Buddha's biography. He was experiencing suffering, and he proposed a question. It brought on a series of questions, and from there he went into the origins. Why are we suffering? So yes, I mean, if you start with depression and you instantaneously get a medicine that suppresses the symptom, it robs you of the journey of discovery. And so what you're suggesting, and I think that's relevant to the book, is don't get stuck at just the symptom. Go on the journey. What is your soul saying? Like, I'm someone who has had panic disorder. I've had a lot of panic attacks. If I just took Xanax, I would have never found out the underlying stories. And those stories end up being really important parameters, invitations for growth. And so after you understand the origins, then you go on into the treatment. It's the doorway to heal. And so, yes, I mean, I think collectively there's a barrage of symptoms. If we can orient appropriately and we can look at the underlying causes, we're very, very close to going on a journey of healing together.
So how does the act of pilgrimage serve as a pathway for healing and transformation? If we're sort of trying to get away from the antidepressants and the chemicals that are given to us by the doctors, why is pilgrimage an important supplement or alternative for you?
Yeah, I mean, this is something I've been working on for decades. I took my first pilgrimage when I was 20. I was in India. I was, again, stricken with depression and anxiety. I went on a journey. I went outside my comfort zone. And only when you leave the comfort zone do you have even the remotest chance at a new discovery. And so what a pilgrimage for me, why I consider pilgrimage medicine, is that it has a number of intangibles that are really hard to replicate in an office. I mean, I did 20 years of offering psychotherapy in an office. I stand by it. I still do it. But I think there's limitations. A concrete office for 45 minutes, scheduled neatly once a week or online now, where you have a conversation that's largely neck up, is a reflection of how grossly materialistic and logical left brain our society and our culture has become. And what pilgrimage does is essentially it's a journey. Okay? It gets you out in nature. It gets you with other people. In a way, it's tribal. In a way, it's land-based. In a way, it asks you to pick up maybe rituals, prayers, meditations, and ceremony that I'll ask you to be embodied, ask you to commit to power places that are imbued with magic. It is a way of bringing online, neurologically speaking, but also metaphysically, a counterpart to our over-reliance on reason and our over-reliance on logic. It brings in the feminine. It brings in the body. It brings in the place. It brings in the people. And it revives what has been lost. So about 10 years ago, I came up with this term to describe the constellation of the polycrisis. I call it a sickness of paradigm. And what I mean by that is for the last 400 years, our culture has been dominated by the scientific reductionism that came during the Age of Reason, which was a counterbalance to many, many sort of overreach of religion. So here we are, we can send a man to the moon, we can unravel the genetic code, we have medicines that have saved lives, all positive, have nothing negative to say about that. But we also lost something. We also lost something at that critical marker of the age of reason. We let go of spirituality. We don't believe in the soul. We don't believe in consciousness. We don't even have a term in psychology or a definition for mind. And so all of these are treated as an epiphenomenon of the brain, or worse than that, they're treated with suspicion. The sickness of paradigm can't be remedied by a solution in that paradigm. And that's what that famous quote by Einstein is, the mind that created the problem can't also create its solution. Paraphrasing. So what we need a remedy that transcends this kind of logical confinement, brick and mortar, neck up, looking at it through explanations and analytic minds. And that's what pilgrimage does. It does all these things that bring online the feminine and the body and the ancestry and spirit. And really what it is a journey to rediscover your soul. And psychology comes from the word healing the soul. It's just crazy, isn't it? It's like we use these terms, but we don't know really where they come from. In ancient Greece, the idea was to heal. The symptoms were a symptom of your soul being dysregulated, unfed or not nourished. And we don't even have a term for that anymore. And so a pilgrimage is truly healing in that way. I think it really is an invitation for people to reclaim what is so missing in our lives.
And what I love about pilgrimages is that you're literally reconnecting with the earth. And like people, we don't walk anymore. We don't walk on the ground anymore. We wear insulation on our feet, shoes. We never actually touch the soil anymore. So it's a simple act of grounding. There's the latest science showing that the simple act of putting your feet in the sand or on the soil, after 10 minutes, your blood is running more smoothly. You're connected with the Schumann resonance. We can't go into it now, but it's such a simple practice. And we kind of think of it as this woo-woo thing. And other things, I love the way that you've had this transformation from a very, successful psychotherapeutic background. You kind of gone into more of this soul dimension, having left that left brain world. So I think that you have a lot to offer. We'll be talking about these alternative ways of healing. Just to rush on a little bit, because we are up against time. One of the reasons why we actually connected was because Shelley and I both had a powerful experience at Borobudur. Not many people know about it. And your book is largely focused on the meaning of Borobudur as a place of pilgrimage and transformation. At least it's mentioned in the book quite often. It's described as the largest Buddhist temple and the largest mandala in the world. But there's also many things that aren't describable. So can you tell us about the importance of Borobudur for you, for the book, and also for the people who might want to come to Java, Indonesia, to experience it?
Yeah, it's an incredible place, isn't it? I mean, it defies words. I'm not a scholar, and I'm especially not a scholar of the Borobudur. Essentially, that I can say, just as a pedestrian, just as an onlooker, it's one of the most exquisitely built, mesmerizing forms of architecture. It looks otherworldly. It looks like a grand cross between a pyramid and a spaceship has landed. It's so ornate and so exquisite, and the details are, would require days and weeks to go through. But for me, the most important aspect of it is its symbolic aspect, okay? Because I come from it not from a scholarly as much as a Jungian perspective. And it's features in the book because several years back, I started having visions, dreams, extrasensory perception, sort of esoteric experiences, which, I wasn't one of those people. I just wasn't. But it's something that I've had conversations with around or before the pandemic. People started having weird experiences. I started having visions of Borobudur. I started having visions not just of Borobudur, but I was seeing my teacher give a ceremony on the top of Borobudur. And not only was he there alone, but he was actually with another master. And I was going on this journey, and something about a journey was pulling me at a very deep soul level. I was being pulled into this journey using these archetypes like breadcrumb trails, like in a detective story. You don't know quite where it's going. And I've had private conversations with you, and I know you know exactly what I'm talking about. And I know people listening are having this experience too, where they are intuitively having pulls, little synchronicities, little dreams, little visions. It's making a mosaic. It doesn't quite make much sense. I suggest you turn yourself fully over to that, because that's the collective unconscious speaking to us. And because we don't speak its language, because of this loss of soul, we don't speak the archetypal language of the collective unconscious, and we're just suspicious of it. But if we just pay attention, it's going to teach us something, and it will all come to make sense. Why you guys have been on your little journey going into caves and up temples, and what's going on in the water purification in Bali. Why did you leave your corporate jobs? It may not make full, complete sense yet, but there's a calling. The Borobudur was calling me. I think it's calling all of us. We might not take people, a bunch of people there, but if we see it as a symbol, then anyone can understand the potency. A mandala is a three-dimensional design that is a blueprint for a celestial day. It's a pure light. It's where the Buddha is conceived out of the womb of emptiness. A deity emerges, a celestial deity, a king of compassion. From a Jungian perspective, what the mandala is a crucible, like an alchemical crucible where light and dark, masculine and feminine, opposing forces are made whole. So what you do at Borobudur is you circumambulate, and there are 9 levels, which is a depiction of the cosmology of Buddhism and Hinduism, going through realms from the most material to the most sublime. As you proceed through stairways and passageways in your ascension, you're passing reliefs. Those reliefs depict Buddhist wisdom and Buddhist stories and Buddhist mythology. So you're learning on the pilgrimage of life about who you are, how to live, how to see the world, how to relate to the world, until you realize you're the deity at the center of the universe. Not in a narcissistic way, but a truly empowered recollection. And that word recollection is really beautiful too, because what that journey also involves is recollecting all the fragments. So this is a time for healing. Our trauma has been fragmented. We've discarded our soul. We've discarded our ancestry. We've discarded our connection to other dimensions and other spirits. We've discarded our natural affinity with the landscape. They're like fragments, as if we took a mirror 400 or 500 years ago and shattered it. And coming through this journey on our way through ascensions, bringing back all the pieces. And so that's a very potent image and symbol for where we are right now. The polycrisis is saying we're fragmented. And the journey to the Borobudur mandala is an invitation to bring back the shards, to make us whole again. So collectively, our unconscious is saying this is the time. The time for healing is now. And that's what I don't want to broadcast the message. It's dire, it's doom and gloom. We're on a precipice. We're heading into the abyss. No, this is the time for the most audacious healing that we could ever do together as a human culture.
How is that possible? What is that?
Yeah. So it's not a one trick or one, there's not one solution. It's a polycrisis. And so there's a poly solution, and from my point of view, it goes inwards to go outward. Okay. There are 2 movements that I think are important for us to talk about. One is to go back in order to go forward, and the other one is to go in order to go out. Going back to go forward is a suggestion that if we really want to see our civilization improve, we have to go back in time to look at how indigenous wisdom cultures once existed. There's a solution back there. We went over it in our haste to get, in our haste for productivity and consumption and the golden age of reason and, capitalism building infrastructure and all the rest of it, we left something behind. And so rather than reinvent the wheel, part of this idea or this motif of cyclic time is go back and remember. And there, if you go to Bali, you go to Turkey, and you go to China, you go to the Amazon, there will be pockets of wisdom keepers, I call them. People that hold the sacred knowledge that they held fast while we were making a dash. They were taking life really slow, and they held on to sacred ways. And they held on to ways that would ensure sustainable lifestyle and balance with nature and balance with community. And we have, with some humility, a lot to learn from them. So that's one movement. The other movement is go within and before we go without. So I have a set of critiques for the social justice movement. I think on the one hand, social justice is about sensitivity to the plight of disenfranchised people. That is noble. That is considered a compassionate heart. What tends to happen, or what I see can happen, is a replication of trauma. So if you've been traumatized and you've been wounded, and then you empower yourself, you can repeat cycles of trauma. So like cancel culture is a way of beating over the head people that don't agree with you in the name of, it being just and moral and for us to take care of others. There's some hypocrisy to it. And so what I think is necessary in that situation is that people actually take care of the very deep wounds they have inside. They have to go inside first to do the inner social justice movement has to occur. And that is a process of, again, recognizing trauma, recognizing fragmentation, recognizing the shadow, recognizing overcompensation, recognizing that, there are all kinds of defense mechanisms in there that need softening. There's some journey that has to happen there where fear is faced, fragments are collected, wounds are actually, first felt before they can be healed. So that inner work is an opportunity for everybody on an individual basis. You asked me earlier, what kind of tools? I mean, the standard set of tools: psychotherapy, shamanism, group work. All these things are a way for us to touch the darkness. I'm not a big proponent of ascending to light. Okay, I think that that's really narrow-minded, very, very sensationalized, very often well broadcast. I mean, those people that are really good in marketing, they can put out the laws of attraction and they can tell you that this is about abundance and everybody can have abundance and everybody can reach the light. Jung was very clear about this. You can't reach the light unless you're prepared to face the darkness. The darkness is found in the light. What does that mean? It's an invitation to go to the places that hurt, to go to the places that feel vulnerable and fragile. That's where your strength is and nowhere else. So the invitation is to go in order to go out, to go back in order to go forward. It comes in for every human being. There is a solution, a distinct solution, just fits custom for you because everybody's different in that way. Yeah, we can use a few accoutrements in the same way, but no one's journey is exactly alike. And so the idea that you can just find a book or a teacher or a tradition and it's going to fit everybody, I think is a waste of time.
Just bringing it back to Borobudur, are there any specific, they talk of Borobudur as a film strip almost of all the walls and the engravings as a film strip of life. Are there any specific moments in that journey for you that have really stood out? Are there any particular reliefs or statues that have resonated with you?
Not so much, because there's 2,600 plus reliefs. So when I went to the Borobudur, I was more interested in one thing happening, which was the fulfillment of the vision that I discussed earlier, which is what happened on top. So I can't say for sure that I actually connected with any one relief panel, although I love this idea that it starts in the karma realm. So the depictions at the bottom of the Borobudur are all the things, basically the polycrisis is at the bottom. the weighing out of the soul depictions happen at the bottom of Borobudur. So the way you enter a temple in Bali is through the demons. The way you enter the temple, the Borobudur, is a good hard look at like your suffering and how things haven't worked out and how outrageous you've been with your expectations and how unkind you've been, and what they call the blade wheel or the boomerang of your consequences are kicking you in the butt. And then slowly start to unravel, and you go through compassion, and then you go through wisdom, and then you go through enlightenment. But for me, the thing that stuck out most about the Borobudur was the ceremony that we did, which is called the Bodhisattva vow. Okay, and I think this is important to talk about in a nutshell. The Bodhisattva resolve is not about transcendence. The apex of spirituality is not about having a flow state in which rainbows flood out of your brain so that you feel sublime and you feel content and you feel full and complete. It's not the end of the journey. The Bodhisattva vow is a set of vows given by a realized master, which we did at the top with my teacher, Geshe Tenzin Zopa. He gave the vow, which is to understand that through the long arc of this cosmic journey, you can take little respites, and you should take little respites, and you should heal yourself, and you should feel this opportunity or possibility for contentment that's in like a well within, that you could enjoy your life just as it is. You don't need more. But that's not the end. The end is to understand that your commitment to other people is what is the most satisfying part of life. If you can transmit your life and parlay it and pay it forward and resensitize yourself to the plight of other people, there's nothing more beneficial. There's nothing more meaningful. There's nothing more consequential. There's nothing more enjoyable. In other words, the most satisfying thing that you can ever accomplish in your life, be it spiritual or mundane, is to resensitize yourself to the plight of other people and to recognize you can make a contribution. That's what happens at the Borobudur. That's what a Buddha is. A Buddha is not an escape artist. A Buddha is an artist of recreating reality, that it's making it more harmonious, more equitable, more possible for other people to realize that they can go on a journey and realize their potential for awakening. And it just iterates like that, like a massive fractal of enlightenment.
Amazing. Thank you, Miles. Unfortunately, we've run out of time. But for those of you who are interested, Miles will also hopefully be leading a tour with us to Borobudur and Java in the later 2025 or early 2026. So
come to the pyramid of enlightenment with us. It'll be an unbelievable experience.
Yeah, and as someone who's been to Egypt, I would say Borobudur is up there with one of the most powerful monuments in the world, most energetically powerful. So I can't wait to go back.
And a hidden gem, actually. It doesn't get nearly as much press, but it is a real hidden gem.